welcome back to another Translator Insider. And today I bring you something that it's not directly related to translation itself, but it's something that as a linguist and also as a mother, I think it would be interesting to address here, which is when it's the right time to introduce a second language to your children. A lot of parents have doubts in this. Even experts have different opinions on that. So today I will be giving you my personal opinion as a linguist and as a mother. So stick around and let's see what is the best timing to get your children to learn a second language. So, when is the best timing to teach your children a second language? This is something that I've been dealing with. I have been hearing a lot of theories about this. And obviously, I've got my own as a parent and also as a linguist. And obviously, this video should not be taken as any sort of medical advice or children advice or anything like that. This is just my personal opinion, and this is what I have been doing with my 6-year-old daughter so far. So, in my view, I think we should introduce a second language as soon as they start talking. If, for example, you have two languages running in the family, you should introduce them at the same time and running them both together, so the kids will learn both at the same time. I honestly think that learning a second language or even a third is very important in this day and age, not just in terms of your brain, in the growth of your brain and how you exercise your brain and you get your brain cells to really work well, but also in the aspect that in today's world, knowing multiple languages is important professional wise, because if you work in a big company, chances are you're going to deal with someone else that is overseas. And if you learn a second language and you can communicate with people overseas, it just opens a lot of doors to you. So I think it's also a very important tool. So, and let alone for example, people in families that come from different cultural backgrounds, it is important that the kids can communicate with the extended family that sometimes may be overseas. That's the case for my daughter. And it's also important that they can communicate and they can feel at home when they actually go and visit those relatives. So I think it is very important that the two things run at the same time, so the kids do it easily and it's something that happens for them naturally and they don't have problems along the track. And I'm going to explain what I think about this. So if you teach them right from the beginning when they start learning, it's really the best option, because kids are like sponges, so they will start absorbing all that information. For example, one of the things that I sometimes use with my daughter most of the times is when I tell her, when she's talking about something in English, I also exemplify by saying what it is in Portuguese. When she was a baby, I remember, for example, I was showing her apple in English, and then I would say apple in Portuguese is maçã. So she would automatically associate that apple. If she goes to Portugal and she talks to her grandparents in Portugal, even to her grandparents that live in Australia but have Portuguese background, she can ask the grandparents that she wants maçã, because they would understand that she refers to apples. So this way, the kids not only learn, and this is my opinion, and this is what I think sometimes goes wrong. This way, the kids not only learn the word itself and start getting acquainted with both languages at the same time, but they also get acquainted and learn the phonetics of both languages, which sometimes can be very difficult. And there's languages, and we all know there's languages from which the phonetics is completely different, and it's very complicated when you try to introduce. And we know, for example, to an adult, sometimes the, these people have really difficulty learning because and sometimes they write really well and they do understand the language, but the communication is hard because of the phonetics. Because when we start talking, we usually learn our mother tongue, and that's the phonetics that we learn, and that's how we train our vocal cords and how we trained ourselves to talk. But if we are learning two languages at the same time and both run at the same time, we are actually giving ourselves the opportunity to have those two ways of communication open, and it's easier for us to learn the two languages. And I think that's one of the things that I agree, and one of the reasons that I agree that it should be introduced as soon as possible. You know, aim for teaching one or more at a time. For example, if you have people, and sometimes happen that one country may have more than one language. That happens, for example, in Switzerland. That may happen, for example, with South African people that have English and Africans, for example. And if you want your kids to learn all of them, which is, I would say, it's very interesting, and I would say it would be a great tool, just keep this learning going. Start from the very beginning. When they start talking, just start. One of the things that I find is that sometimes people, and I was advised, I remember, by sometimes educators, all those sorts of experts, to speak the second language at home, because their mother tongue they will pick up and learn once they get to school. Well, I see a few problems happening with this, and this is my personal opinion, but I obviously disagree with this line of thought. And why? Exactly because of what I just said before, the phonetics. The kids need to learn the phonetics of both languages. And I have seen in my daughter's school that sometimes kids struggle with English because they are used to talk another language at home, and obviously their learning and their phonetics may not be up to scratch, and then they end up in having to do speech therapy and things like that to pick up with English, because there is languages that are really different, and the phonetics, it's really different, and it's a lot of training to do. Whilst if you do it at the same time, it's more easy on the child, because they are actually adapting to both things at the same time. And yes, there will be a period, and for example, my daughter is going through that period, that as we speak, as she's going through that phase now, where they mix both languages, and sometimes they may be talking in one language and put words of the other. My daughter does that a lot. For example, when she tries to talk to my parents, she speaks some Portuguese and some English in the mix. But that's okay. That's perfectly normal, because their brain will be absorbing all of this, as I said, like a sponge, and they will get to a point that the brain will start separating, and they will start acquiring all the vocabulary from both languages, and they will eventually separate them and be able to speak both of them separately without mix. So even if your child starts mixing up, don't worry, that's normal. All of them do that, and I believe it is, in my view, the correct way of doing this. This is how I have been doing with my own daughter. I've been trying to get her to speak Portuguese and English, and I will never stop speaking in English with her, because I want her to learn the phonetics of both languages, which, as you know, is different. And if I actually do this, she is acquiring both phonetics. The other day she was doing her mathematics exercises on her tablet, and she was actually doing the maths in Portuguese. She was counting the numbers in Portuguese. I let her do it, and she was actually thinking in Portuguese, and she replied and gave the correct answers, even though she was doing it she was reading it in English and she was doing it in Portuguese. So this is very good because your kids um, adapt to both languages, adapt to the phonetics of both languages, and in the end, they will end up being bilingual, which is what you obviously want. So, obviously, and as I said, there is a lot of different opinions on this. There are people that obviously will disagree with me. They will think that you should speak the second language and then they will pick up at school. I see that that sometimes can cause problems for the child because of this phonetic problem and because obviously it's like it's exactly what happens when you change country and kids up and that as well, and they are suddenly put in a school speaking another language and they have to pick up all from scratch. So it's basically the same thing, and they're going to start picking it up when they're 5 and they get to school. So if you start at 1.5, 2, when they start talking, before 1, most of the times, if you start going when they get to school, they will be able to deal with both languages and they will be able to deal with all these things. So this is honestly my input. This is what I have been doing with my daughter, and today I decided to share it because I think it would be interesting to share, and obviously it would be interesting to know your input as well. So for today, I hope you really like this insider today. Obviously, it's not related to translation itself, but I think it's actually important that I mention this because I know that even among translators, most of us are also parents, and this question is always comes about, and sometimes people come to us with different ideas and stuff. And sometimes because we deal with languages every day, we know all these little things that seriously count when you are learning a language. And when you are a professional linguist, I think you can see things on another perspective that can help a lot, I think, in a case like this. I chose to do this with my daughter. I definitely think it's paying off. She's learning, she's speaking both languages. Of course, it's not perfect. Of course, she's going to be better at English than Portuguese because English is her mother tongue and English and Portuguese is a second language. But she is learning and she is actually getting in the right path where she can already think in the second language and do something as I would say complex as mathematics, thinking in another language that not her mother tongue. So I think this is important and helps. I think it's been helping her. She can communicate with my parents and other relatives, even here in Australia, that obviously find really nice that she speaks Portuguese. So I think I would share this with you. So why not? I decided to share this with you so we can actually put it out there. This is my experience. This is what I've been doing. But if you are doing it differently, if you have another technique, please share. Let's keep this conversation going. If you really have another way of doing it, maybe please share and leave me your opinion below, and I will be delighted to comment on, possibly even making another video to comment on your comments. Why not? So please leave your comment or suggest any other subject that you would like to see discussed on our insider. And the same, put a like on the video and subscribe the channel with a little click on the bell so you get a notification of a new insider every week. Before I go, I would like to thank you all and say that next week there won't be insider because of the public holidays, but I'll see you in 2 weeks. So have a good break, have a good holiday, and see you in 2 weeks. Thank you so very much for watching. Bye.